Shalom, I'm Sara Rigler, and welcome to my home in the old city of Jerusalem. Something momentous is taking place today in Israel. The funeral of Rabbi Raheim Kanyevsky. The police are expecting up to 1 million mourners to attend this funeral. That's over 10% of the population of Israel. Why are so many people coming to pay their last respects to Raheim Kanyevsky? And the answer is that he is a hero for our time. I'm going to speak in a minute about heroes and how in the Western world we got rid of heroes long ago, decades ago. But I just want to introduce you a little bit to who Raheim Kanyevsky was. He was a great Torah scholar, an amazing genius of an intellect, but that isn't why he was respected and loved. He was a man, more than knowledge, he was a man of wisdom. And I think it's a very important point because a high percentage of Hitler's SS men had PhD degrees. Just because a person has a high intellectual accomplishment and is very brilliant says absolutely nothing about their quality as a human being. Rav Kanievsky, everyone called him Rav Chaim. Rav Chaim was more than brilliant of mind. He had wisdom, he had depths, he had unbelievable moral status of moral accomplishment. He would have he wanted nothing more than to spend his life studying Torah, which sometime we'll talk about that, the importance of what that does in the world, the spiritual effect of studying Torah. But he didn't. He studied Torah, of course, every day, but he also opened his home, his very modest, humble home in Bnai, a city. Bnai is a city to the north of Tel Aviv, where, as I said, almost 1 million people are going to be converging today for his funeral. He had a very humble home. He was a very modest person, not into material things at all. He opened his modest home every day to hundreds of people who would come to ask him questions, seek his advice, get his blessing, or just meet him, just be able to say once in their life they had been in the presence of a gadol. Rav Chaim Kanyevsky was considered the gadol hador, the greatest of our generation. And again, what I mean by greatest, what we all meant when we call him the gadol hador, is a greatness of moral fiber, generosity, kindness, modesty, devotion, dedication, living his ideals on the inside and the outside. I remember when the hero became defunct in Western society. When I was a teenager, for a brief time, everybody's hero in America, I grew up in America, everyone's hero was John F. Kennedy. Elected president of the United States when he was 42 years old, young, vibrant, idealistic, eloquent. He founded the Peace Corps. He cared about the whole world. He wanted to uplift the whole world. He was also so cultured. He brought in concerts and operas to the White House. He was handsome. He was personable, and he was everybody's hero. And then, of course, he was assassinated, and everybody of my generation remembers where they were when they heard the shocking news of JFK's assassination. And several years later, it came out that he was having this adulterous relationship with Marilyn Monroe, who the Secret Service men were sneaking in by some hidden tunnel into the White House. And suddenly, not only he as our hero was just dashed to the ground, but all heroes. Every book, every magazine article, every newspaper was all talking about the death of the hero. There are no more heroes. There is no one who, when you look hard enough and find out the whole story, is worthy of being called a hero. Somehow everyone is corrupt. And that was the loss of the hero in Western society. I came to Jerusalem 36 years ago, and I also didn't know other people. Is there anybody who really is inside and out worthy of really respecting them and admiring them and adulating them and wanting to follow them? And within 2 months of my arriving in Jerusalem, someone asked me, they were writing a book, a spiritual guidebook to Eretz Yisrael, to the land of Israel, and they wanted me to write an article on Tzidkaniot, which means righteous women. And somehow I got a lead, it's a whole story, to a hidden holy woman who lived in north central Israel in some ramshackle shack in the Jezreel Valley. And I went to meet her. And I met a person of such greatness in that poverty. She lived in total poverty. I mean, I ended up writing a book about her. This was my first book, which became an immediate bestseller, Holy Woman, about the road to greatness of Rebbe Sara Kramer. She was a person, she survived the Holocaust. She came out of Auschwitz at the age of 20 with no living relatives. She married, she came to what was then Palestine in 1946. She married Rabbi Moshe Kramer. They never had any children. They lived in great poverty. She was so great. For the prime of her life, some 20 years, she took care of multiply handicapped children. This was in the 50s and 60s in Israel. Israel wasn't those days a real third world country. They didn't have any real facilities for such multiply handicapped children. And she took them in, as many as 4 at a time, into this, I mean, they didn't have running hot water. When she had to change, most of them, or all of them, were incontinent in the days before disposable diapers. And in the middle of the night, she would get up and want to change their cloth diapers. They shouldn't have to be lying there in their wet or filth. And she had to first heat up the water on the stove. She didn't have running hot water. It's a whole story. I'm not going to go into it now. So maybe sometime in this on this channel we'll go into the wonderful story of Rebbe Sara Kramer, the Holy Woman. But she was not the only great hero that I met in Jerusalem. I wrote another book, Emunah with Love and Chicken Soup, over here, about Rebbe Henny Machlis, who was also a great hero. She had like 300 people for a Shabbos meal, and again in her modest Jerusalem home, like no money, but somehow just love for everyone. What makes these people heroes? Love for everyone they encountered. With Rebbe Sara Kramer, it wasn't just the handicapped children. She loved me from the first time I met her. I was literally a couple months in Israel, maybe 3 or 4 months out of the ashram, where I had spent 15 years. She loved me like a daughter from the first time she met me. She always used to say, you're my daughter, you're my daughter. And she treated me that way and loved me unconditionally. I found out after she died that there were many women young women who she also treated as daughters and called them tzaddikim and loved them unconditionally, which that's the whole point. Her love was just unconditional and vast. And that's what makes for greatness and for heroes. People who can go beyond themselves and achieve great spiritual levels. Not through meditation and sitting by themselves, but by opening their hearts and their homes to people would come to her in distress, and they needed blessings and they needed advice, and She was always open to them, always took the time, as busy as she was, took the time to help whoever came to them. We need heroes. Why? Because the purpose of life is to grow, to develop personally and spiritually. That is the purpose of life. And we have to know that there are those who've actually accomplished it. Because if you're going on a road, and a very steep upward road, to a certain destination, and you don't know that there's anybody who's ever gotten there, if nobody has ever reached that destination, what hope do we have? So we need these heroes to keep our hope alive, so we know it's possible to get there. It's possible to become spiritually great. Not in the way they are. I make this very clear in my book, Holy Woman. And in both of these books, and in the book about Henny Machlis. The point isn't to become like Henny Machlis. The point is to become our own highest self. And to become our own highest self, we follow our own unique road. But we have to know that it's possible to attain spiritual greatness in our own way, not in their way, but in our own way. So that's why we need heroes. We need to know there are people who are genuinely, authentically, spiritually great. Not so we can idolize them. We don't believe in idols. But so that we can know that the destination is reachable. So on this day of the funeral of Raheim Kanyevsky, they say that when a great soul leaves this world, his mitos, his character traits are up for grabs. You can pick something. His modesty, his dedication, his selflessness, his love. You can pick something and want to emulate that character trait, which will take us all, take each one of us to our own spiritual greatness. Have a great day.